Karoline Leavitt's bold presence in conservative media has caught attention nationwide. But her latest moment on air with Jen Psaki, the former White House press secretary under Joe Biden, created a shockwave. What began as a routine political segment quickly turned into one of the most defining moments of her career. Psaki aimed to belittle Leavitt, but underestimated her resolve. What followed was one sentence that shut down the room and lit up the internet. The broadcast took place during a panel segment on MSNBC, where Psaki now serves as a contributor. The discussion centered on media bias, conservative voices, and the upcoming 2024 election. Leavitt, invited to offer a counterpoint, held her own with calm poise. Psaki, however, shifted the conversation from policy to personal attack. Her tactic was familiar: dismiss, insult, and move on. But this time it backfired. Jen Psaki smirked as she questioned Leavitt's qualifications, suggesting her opinions were rooted in right-wing extremism rather than facts. It was a moment clearly designed to embarrass. The other panelists nodded. The tone was smug. For a second, it looked like the typical dismissal of a conservative guest. But Leavitt didn't flinch. She didn't get defensive. Instead, she dropped a single sentence that flipped the entire room. With absolute composure, Karoline Leavitt looked Psaki dead in the eyes and said, "It's not extremist to ask for honesty, Jen. It's American." The silence that followed was deafening. No scripted comeback. No shouting match. Just stunned faces across the panel. Psaki didn't respond immediately. She looked unsettled, almost unsure of how to proceed. It was one of those rare moments on live TV where truth pierces through spin. Social media erupted almost instantly. The clip of Leavitt's remarks circulated across Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Conservative figures praised her clarity. Independent commentators called it a rare instance of courage in modern media. Even some liberal voices acknowledged the power of the moment, conceding that Psaki had been caught off guard. The viral nature of the video wasn't just because of what was said, but because of what it represented. What did it represent? It was more than a verbal counterpunch. It was a moment of ideological defiance. Leavitt challenged the media narrative that has painted conservatives as outliers or threats. In one sentence, she reframed the debate. Asking for truth, accountability, and fairness in coverage isn't extremist. It's foundational to democracy. That's what resonated. That's what couldn't be ignored. This wasn't the first time Psaki had used dismissive language against conservatives. During her White House tenure, she regularly deflected questions from Fox News and other right-leaning outlets. Her approach was to mock rather than engage. That tactic might work against weaker opponents. But Leavitt was different. She was calm, articulate, and unapologetically patriotic. And that made her Psaki's worst nightmare. The power of Leavitt's response was also in its brevity. In today's media landscape, where shouting often drowns out substance, she didn't need to yell. She didn't need paragraphs of explanation. Just a single sentence, clear, direct, and unshakable. It reminded viewers that conviction doesn't need volume. It just needs truths. Soon after the broadcast, conservative platforms began dissecting the moment. Articles appeared with titles like "Karoline Leavitt exposes media hypocrisy" and "Psaki silenced in one sentence." Talk radio hosts played the clip repeatedly. Podcasts broke it down line by line. It had become more than a viral video. It was a cultural moment. A flashpoint. The context made it even more powerful. Psaki had spent months criticizing Republicans for so-called misinformation while avoiding hard questions herself. Leavitt's remark wasn't just a rebuttal, it was a mirror. She forced Psaki to look at her own double standards. And Psaki had no defense prepared. Because truth doesn't need rehearsal. It just shows up. Leavitt's team released a statement after the interview, thanking Americans for their overwhelming support. Karoline stands for the values of everyday Americans, the statement read. She refuses to be silenced by elitist gatekeepers in the media, and she will continue to speak the truth, whether the left likes it or not. The response only fueled more interest. Meanwhile, Psaki's defenders scrambled to reframe the situation. Some tried to spin the silence as grace. Others accused Leavitt of being scripted. But the viewers knew better. The authenticity in Leavitt's tone was obvious. It wasn't rehearsed. It was lived experience. And that's something Psaki's rehearsed lines can't replicate. In many ways, this moment was a microcosm of the larger battle in American politics, the fight between narrative and reality. Psaki represents the polished, carefully controlled message of the establishment. Leavitt represents raw honesty from the outside. And in this encounter, honesty won. As the video gained millions of views, even mainstream outlets had to acknowledge it. CNN mentioned it briefly. NBC ran a short recap, downplaying its impact. But viewers saw through it. The people were already making up their minds. And overwhelmingly, they sided with Leavitt. So who is Karoline Leavitt really? A former Trump administration staffer, she has been rising quickly as a young voice for conservative values. She's been unafraid to call out media bias, government overreach, and hypocrisy in Washington. And now, she has become a symbol of something bigger, a generational shift in conservatism. She represents the young Americans who feel alienated by the mainstream narrative. The ones who believe in free speech, small government, and national pride. The ones who are tired of being told their views are extreme just because they differ from the corporate media consensus. Leavitt gives them a voice. This exchange with Psaki didn't just make her viral. It made her dangerous to the establishment. Because now, millions know who she is. Millions heard her speak truth to power. And millions more are realizing that they, too, can push back against media narratives designed to silence them. Even former President Donald Trump commented indirectly. On Truth Social, he reposted the clip with fire emojis, writing, "Strong young voice. Truth wins." Though he didn't mention Leavitt by name, the timing and tone made it clear. The conservative movement is taking note, and they're ready to back her. Psaki, on the other hand, has remained quiet. No follow-up comments. No attempts to clarify. Just silence. That speaks volumes. Because for someone who built a career on controlling the message, this moment spun out of her control. And she knows it. The truth is, the American people are hungry for authenticity. They're tired of rehearsed talking points, elite detachment, and smug condescension. What they saw in Leavitt wasn't just a political jab, it was real. It was human. And it struck a chord deep in the American soul. College students across the country shared the clip in dorm rooms and classrooms. Political science professors used it to illustrate the power of rhetoric. Young conservatives said they finally saw someone speaking for them in mainstream media. It wasn't just a win for Leavitt. It was a turning point for how a new generation sees their place in the political conversation. What made Leavitt's sentence so powerful wasn't just its content. It was the confidence behind it. She didn't ask for permission to speak. She didn't seek validation. She simply said the truth, and in doing so, she exposed how rare that is in today's televised discourse. The moment felt spontaneous but historic, a snapshot of real courage. Critics still tried to dismiss her. They wrote blog posts questioning her resume, her media experience, and even her tone. But these attacks only reinforced the core of her message. If asking for honesty makes you a threat, then the system is broken. And Karoline Leavitt made that painfully clear. Soon, grassroots political groups began inviting Leavitt to speak. Not just Republican organizations, but independent forums, Gen Z groups, and nonpartisan panels interested in hearing from a young voice unafraid to challenge the status quo. This wasn't about left or right anymore. It was about truth versus narrative. Leavitt's supporters coined a phrase from her sentence. Honesty is American. It appeared on t-shirts, mugs, and online banners. The phrase encapsulated something deeper than politics. It echoed a founding principle of the country, the idea that truth belongs to the people, not the elites. Her sentence also inspired a wave of user-generated content. TikTok creators reacted to the moment. Instagram Reels reposted it with patriotic music. Even parody accounts acknowledged the power of the clip. For a brief moment, the internet agreed on something. Truth can still shake the system. Behind the scenes, producers and media insiders admitted the segment hadn't gone as planned. One anonymous staffer was quoted saying, "We thought Leavitt would fold, but she flipped the whole conversation." That says a lot. Because media figures are used to controlling the script. This time, they lost control. Leavitt was later interviewed by conservative networks and given a chance to explain her thoughts. She doubled down. The media wants to call you extreme just for asking questions. That's not democracy. That's propaganda. Her words resonated with an audience tired of being gaslit and silenced. The beauty of the moment was in its simplicity. No charts. No statistics. Just a principle stated clearly. It reminded people that you don't need to be loud or angry to be powerful. You just need to speak the truth when others are afraid to. Mainstream journalists reluctantly acknowledged the moment's virality. Some tried to move on quickly, pretending it hadn't mattered. But it had. The view counts, the reaction videos, the online debate. It all pointed to one conclusion. Leavitt struck a chord, and the system knew it. For many Americans, it was the first time they'd heard Leavitt speak. And that first impression was unforgettable. She didn't just debate, she inspired. Her sentence gave people permission to question authority again. And in a media environment filled with noise, she became a signal. Some called it a media earthquake. Others said it was the most important 10 seconds of political TV this year. But no matter the label, the impact was undeniable. And the source of that impact was a young woman with the courage to speak clearly in a hostile environment. In retrospect, the sentence will likely be remembered not for its cleverness, but for its clarity. That's what made it resonate. No complicated wording. No academic spin. Just a reminder that truth-telling isn't a partisan act. It's an American duty. What happens now? Leavitt's profile will surely rise. Media invitations, speaking tours, political endorsements. But more importantly, her words will continue to echo. In conversations, in classrooms, in living rooms. Because once you hear truth spoken that clearly, it's hard to forget. Across political lines, many people privately agreed with her. Even those who didn't vote Republican said, "She has a point." That's how powerful truth is. It cuts past labels, past party lines, and speaks directly to the conscience. Leavitt reminded us of that. Leavitt also showed a path forward for young conservatives. Her moment proved that you don't have to be angry or aggressive to stand your ground. You just have to know what you believe and say it plainly. She became a role model without even trying. Journalists are trained to control interviews, to lead guests where they want. But Psaki lost control the moment Leavitt said that sentence. She had no follow-up, no pivot, because there was no spin that could undo what the audience had just heard. It was a modern, you can't handle the truth moment, but with the truth coming from the underdog. Leavitt was outnumbered on the panel, outgunned by experience. But she had something stronger, conviction, and that proved more powerful than media clout. This moment is already being replayed in conservative ads, reels, and campaigns. But more than a talking point, it's a teaching moment. A reminder that one clear, honest sentence can outmatch 1,000 talking heads. In Washington, staffers noticed. Politicians noticed. They may not admit it, but that sentence reminded them that authenticity still matters. That voters are paying attention. That scripted arrogance is no longer bulletproof. Psaki's silence afterward was almost more telling than Leavitt's words. It showed that when confronted with truth, even the most polished media figures can be rendered speechless. And sometimes, that silence says more than any argument. We live in an age of curated narratives and controlled messaging. But moments like this break through the noise. They remind us of what political discourse is supposed to be: honest, courageous, and free from elite filters. Leavitt's one sentence forced an entire network to reassess its control. It forced viewers to reconsider who really has power in the conversation. And it gave hope to millions who feel like their voices are being silenced. In the days that followed, Leavitt trended on multiple platforms. She gained tens of thousands of followers. But more importantly, she gained credibility. Not given by media, earned by courage. Her team has been clear, she's not backing down. And that's what scares her critics the most. Because for the first time in a long time, the truth has a new voice. And it's young, fearless, and ready to lead. If this moment taught us anything, it's that the establishment's grip on the narrative is slipping. One honest sentence can break 1,000 polished lies. And Karoline Leavitt just proved it. So where does this leave the media? It leaves them exposed, vulnerable, desperate to regain control. But they won't succeed, because people remember the truth when they hear it. And that memory is spreading. Even in schools and universities, students are sharing the clip. It's being studied, discussed, analyzed. Because truth, real, unfiltered truth, is rare. And when it shows up, people pay attention. The legacy of that sentence will live on far beyond this week. It will be quoted, referenced, and remembered. Not because it was clever, but because it was real. Karoline Leavitt didn't plan a viral moment. She just spoke from the heart. And that honesty, rare, raw, and brave, did more than just win a debate. It reignited faith in honest political conversation. Critics may continue to attack her. The media may try to downplay it. But the truth doesn't go away. It sticks. It spreads. And Leavitt's sentence is now part of that movement. Americans are waking up. They're no longer satisfied with scripted news and fake outrage. They want substance. They want truth. And thanks to voices like Leavitt, they're starting to get it. This wasn't just a good media moment. It was a reset. A reboot of what political courage looks like. A glimpse into the future of American discourse. So many politicians talk around issues. Leavitt went through them. Straight to the point. No filter. No fear. And that's exactly what the country needed to hear. What happens next will be shaped by moments like this. Where truth overrides spin. Where courage defeats condescension. Where real people speak real words. And the nation listens. Leavitt proved that clarity is more powerful than clout. That conviction beats credentials. And that truth, when spoken boldly, still changes everything. The mainstream media has long underestimated people like her. But now they're realizing there are millions behind her. Millions who feel the same. Millions ready to stand up. We are entering a new chapter of political conversation, one defined not by pundits, but by patriots. Not by privilege, but by principle. And Karoline Leavitt just lit the torch. From one sentence came a movement. From one moment, momentum. That's how truth works. It needs no permission, only a voice. And now, that voice is growing louder. Jen Psaki may have walked into that segment with confidence, but she walked out overshadowed by something more powerful than spin, truth. Leavitt's sentence will be remembered not as a burn, but as a breakthrough. In a world where voices are silenced and truth is censored, Karoline Leavitt reminded us all of the power of honesty. Her sentence wasn't just a rebuttal, it was a revolution. And if you believe in the right to speak freely and think boldly, make sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more voices that won't back down. Together, we can bring truth back to the forefront.